Hello, Marky Dragon, also known as Marcus Eikenberry in real life, and welcome to my backyard. I hope that it's not too windy out today. I know that there is a bit of wind, and I'm hoping that it's just not too much to film in. Today is a pretty neat day. You know, the clouds are starting to thicken up and darken up, and here in Florida in the winter, it's actually pretty dry. It's actually in the middle of summer when it gets really wet and we have all the big thunderstorms and everything. And in fact, I just today noticed some new creatures that are joining us here. And let's see if I can focus in on them here. There they are. So we got, is that a pelican? It is. Look at that. So pelicans joining us. And that's actually the first time I've seen a pelican out here at the lake. I've seen them out at the coast, but we are in fact about 40 miles from the coast. So, okay, yeah. So anyway, here we are. Okay, let's. Oh, look at that! The camera's getting blown by the. I better tighten that down. Camera's like starting to drift from the wind. So, I got a good question here. And first off, I do want to mention that I got several people who talked about recently. I have, been filming a lot more inside and everything, and they lamented for the days of when I was out here, going outside, going to different places. I actually went to a bunch of different places today, and I didn't find any place that was appropriate for filming. Every place was private property that looked really neat. So, I came back here to my private property to actually film. So, I'll try and get out a bit more because I know you guys like it. So, okay, this is from Elma Streak. Golly, I can't even pronounce this. Elma Streak. I think that's how it's pronounced. From Romania, and wants to talk more about choosing the right path. So he says he's watched the mailbags, and he likes some of the ideas that I give in them and thinks that they're awesome. And the choosing the right path was one of them that I recently did. In one of your previous shows, you said that that if you would be able to roll back time, you would choose your path, you'd choose something else. Pretty much the stage that he's thinking about his future right now, college, that he'll follow. And I love to do plenty of things, so I really have no idea what to choose. Now the question is, what would your choice and why? If I went back in time, would it be business, programming, others, stuff like that? So, I think about it from time to time. One is that if I were to go back in time, would I change my path? Would I intentionally do something else? And I'm not so sure that I would, because those choices that I made are what has made me who I am today. And those choices are not so much about, whether or not I did the right thing or whether or not I could have done something better. I have very few things that I wish I would have done better. Even the times where I got in trouble with the law, where I, got fired from my jobs, and other things. All of those are experiences that all put together are who made me who I am today. And I consider each one of those experiences to be educational. Even getting fired and realizing that and analyzing, okay, could I have done a better job in this spot? Or I even got fired one time for not answering a voicemail on my own phone in the morning, which was pretty crazy. But it was, just one of those other deals. I got rehired that afternoon when his father found out he fired me. I worked for a company where, some of the family worked there, and the son fired me. And So, but thinking about, okay, so would I choose a different path or whatnot? The only thing that I wish that I had done better, which is to, manage money better within my businesses. And but that is something that now that I've figured out how to do that, and I actually don't own any business right at the moment. It may appear that I do, but I actually the Marquee Dragon Game Codes store, I actually don't own it. So it's one of those decisions where it was the right choice at the right time, allowing me to continue what I do best. It's a partnership, but I'm paid like as a contractor. And so will I own my own companies again? Yes. Will I take on partners or set up methods or whatever so that I, manage money better? Yes. And do I still think that all this experience that I have, gives me the right direction for, how to do better in the future? Absolutely. So, for you making your choices, it's really about, okay, so, would a college education, if you were to gamble on this stuff, would a college education do you better than if you didn't have it? And in my case, my college education, which was none, and my high school education, which was nil, I suffered from, severe dyslexia and everything. And, while I was able to grasp everything and, sit and listen to a lecture or whatever, and study something and know it well, it didn't translate well whenever I tested. And so for me, school was not the answer. Just getting straight in and doing was the answer. I'm not saying that everybody's dyslexic should take that path or whatnot, but it's just the path that I chose. And, would I, change some of those things? I suppose now, knowing what I know, I would make some smarter decisions, but I would probably still follow the same general path. And so, did I know back when I was a teenager, late teens, early 20s, that I wanted to be involved in video games? The video game industry was a much different thing back then. We didn't really get the online stuff heavy until the mid-90s. And even then, the internet was in its infancy. And so now things have totally changed. The internet is one of the most important things that have happened in the 20th century. And, it happened right at the end, but, its impact is enormous. Just like, to make that happen was, Intel making processors and everything. It actually, the whole Intel story really goes back to did you know that AMD was actually founded before Intel? And that there was another company called Fairchild, which is really kind of the catalyst that started Silicon Valley. And that the guy who, I believe that I'm right on this, the guy who was founded Intel actually worked at Fairchild, and they were the first ones to make silicon transistors. So before that, they were based on another technology which didn't handle heat well and didn't handle, environment changes well. And silicon was the first one that was handled well, and it made the space age possible. You can't imagine, before that time, we had vacuum tubes and everything. And can you imagine how the U.S. landed on the moon and the lander and everything and all the electronics in there and stuff? Can you imagine if it had to be all tube-based? those tubes were big. They were like this. Some of them were this small, but that was very rare. Most of them were like this. Some of them were even like this. And, bigger than a light bulb, a regular light bulb. And so, anyway, how did I get off onto that? But it's just a pretty incredible story, that whole thing. But, so back when I was born in 1970, after the space thing happened, after we landed on the moon. And so, by the time, so 1980, I was 10 years old. Some of the things that, were around back then is we had some of our first arcade games and such, but that just seemed so far out of reach to me to make a stand-up arcade game type of thing that I never thought that anything like that would be possible. And so it wasn't until the internet came along and made commerce available to all of us on an international basis. Wow, the wind is really starting to pick up. They say it was only supposed to be 8-mile-an-hour gusts today, but living on a lake, the gusts are much, much stronger. So I didn't even have the same choices now. So what I'm trying to say is that when you make your choices now, you may end up at another place, even though you had this path that you were going to go on. And that's because the environment around you will continue to change and will continue to really turn into something new that we never thought of. And I'm trying to think of what's going to happen next, and probably within the next 50 years we'll see private citizens taking their own spacecraft up, and stuff like that, and virtual reality is going to enormously take off, and electronics will continue to follow Moore's law and continue to get smaller and more powerful. In fact, at Fairchild, there was one of the guys that was working on creating these first electronics named Moore. His last name was Moore. And I don't know if that's where Moore's law began, but it seems to me that it's very possible, because Moore's law has to do with the reduction in size of electronics and the increase in fold in power of each electronic. So anyway, we could get into some really, really incredible things in the future. Or, even, think of programming cell phones 20 years from now that you don't see or whatnot, that are inserted right behind your ear, and that don't need to be plugged in, and that the battery lasts for several years and nobody sees them or whatnot. And to answer the phone, you just think about answering it. And to make a call, you just think about making a call. And to interface with, these things will interface with your television and your remote controls and everything. And you'll just think about it, and it'll send a signal telling the stuff to change and everything. And who would think of these kinds of things? And how would you look at a path and guess where things are going to go in the future? So, if video games are your passion, then programming might be a good way to go. But also, you could look at business. That business skills don't change. They don't change over the years. And in fact, here's an example of how business skills do not change over the years. And that is the fact that if you were an online marketer, if you did affiliate marketing or just online marketing with like Google and stuff like that, you would know that one of the granddaddy sources for marketing, the book, was written at the turn of the century, 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. And this book really had to do with print advertising and everything, but every single thing in this applies to current day stuff. And like guerrilla marketing was written before the internet, before the internet was public, and stuff like that. So, all of those things are still applicable today, except that we think about them in different terms. Back in 1900, they thought about it all as print and maybe as paintings on the sides of some buildings advertising. And that was the extent of marketing. Or maybe a barker at a circus or something like that. Somebody would stand out there and shout to everybody, hey, look at this stuff. Or snake oil salesmen going door to door. Now, look at what it's morphed into, but it's still sales. And it has to do with writing good ads that catch people's attention, making good graphics that catch a person's attention on a banner, or writing good articles that attract people to your site where you sell other stuff, and that it's not a hard sell, it's a soft sell. You're actually offering good information, and then there's these other products that they see that are available, and if that's what they need, they pick it up. That's always been my way of doing it. And in fact, all of my videos here, most all of them, I link back to markydragon.com, where we sell game codes. And it's a soft sell. If you need EVE Online, World of Tanks, or, Link Realms codes or whatever, you can come to us. And if you don't need them, that's fine. But everything that I give to you on this channel is still valuable, I hope, just standing on its own. So this is all the whole marketing thing and stuff, and that won't change. Where will we be in another 20 years? I'll probably be still talking in front of a camera somehow, except, I'll have a pure white beard. I'm really not that old. I'm 42, so 20 years I'll be 62. Probably still be playing video games hardcore, and even if I've figured out a way to retire by then, I'll probably still be playing video games and doing videos, because I love to play games and I love to share information, and that is just what I'm driven to do. So figure out maybe what you're driven to do, and figure out how it can apply to you long term. A business degree would probably do you very well, because we will still have business 50 years from now when, maybe if you're 20 now, you'd be 70 then, so maybe that doesn't apply. So maybe 30 years from now, when you're 50 years old and kind of in the prime of your work. So think of it in those terms. Building the skills, and then if you like the technology, just building skills around what will engage with technology in the future. So anyway, that's my thoughts for today. I'm Marky Dragon. Take care. Now that you've made it this far, can I interest you in another video? In the upper left, I talk about the future of translation. You remember Star Trek? You remember, of course you remember Star Trek. You know what it is. The communicator badges, I think that those are going to become reality in the next 10 years. We won't have necessarily starships that we're communicating with, but it will do the translations, like was shown in the TV series. So I'm looking forward to that, and that's my prediction. I'm talking about it there. So in the upper right, What the Fast? This is an older video. Look at that. I have hair. And in that video, I actually show how What the Fast works, and why it is so good for anyone who is playing like a Twitch-based game that has any lag, or even not a Twitch-based game but you have extreme lag. This can help, because it actually makes a more direct route for you to get to the game server, thus reducing lag. And I explain how it works there, and in that video also has a link on how to get it, and they now offer 30 days free trial. So you might want to check that out if you have any lag issues. In the lower right, I have a little War Z action there. It's in the dark. That one is kind of hard to see, but you know what? That is when it's most tense. So if you like War Z stuff, check it out. That'll link to my playlist. And then in the lower left, I get all kinds of people who ask me all kinds of entrepreneurial questions. And that one talks about a teenager who's looking to start out. Does he do school? Does he complete school? Does he start working on a job right away? Does he start with making a new company right away? and I try and go through telling about how I got started and what things I would change, and maybe how he can do it better. So, thanks for watching. Enjoy this music on the way out. I'm Marky Dragon. Take care.